Are you prepared to navigate today's bond markets for your clients? With decades of experience, MFS has helped advisors uncover fixed income investment opportunities through volatile markets. Learn more at MFS.com.
Blog Talk Radio.
College football fans near and far, welcome to another edition of Quick Slants, episode 71 to be exact. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Dev McMillan, but I'm here with the star of the show. We got War Room Sports college football guru Fred Purdue in the house. What up, Fred?
What's going on, man? Oh, man. My heart was through my chest, and I was a little scared on Saturday, but we pulled it out. It's all about you, baby. Let's go.
I know you were. Them boys were getting mashed for a minute there, but they came back and did what they had to do. All right, well, we're going to get this episode right underway. We're going to talk about some things that's going on in the world of college sports, as we always do. We're going to end the show with our Pick'em segment, and those are games coming straight from our War Room Sports college football Pick'em contest powered by ESPN. So we're going to start off, man. I got to ask you about this whole thing with Louisville and Bobby Petrino. Reportedly, his buyout is too high. They're saying that they're not in a position to buy him out. So does that mean that they're stuck with Bobby Petrino, even though they don't really want him?
Yeah, it looks like they're stuck with him. I mean, $14 million buyout. I mean, this is, and the University of Louisville, when the donations are down, according to the athletic director and people close to the school. You have about $16 million worth of donations and money laying around after so many things, such as Tom Jurich, their athletic director, as well as Rick Pitino, the basketball coach, being let go and things like that. You have about $16 million left in allocated funds, so you don't want to, and they're depleted, and donations from alum and students aren't really coming in like they used to. It's a very bad recipe for a coach that you might as well call him you're stuck with him for a while, and he just got an extension. So things are getting bad, but at the end of the day, he's a quarterback whisperer, and sometimes good coaches make bad mistakes. I blame him for the Florida State loss, but at the same time, he's produced a Heisman Trophy winner. He's produced some of the best offenses that you've seen, and quite honestly, who's better? Who are you going to hire that's a better ad than Bobby Petrino? I mean, are you going out to go get Lane Kiffin? Are you going to the NFL? I mean, you're not a premier program. You haven't won an ACC title since you've been in the ACC. So what gives you the reason to fire a really good coach? And by the way, you brought him back. You chose to bring him back. So You might want to be grateful for what you have.
So you brought him back. Patience is running thin, and they can't even get rid of him because they don't have enough cash on hand to do it. What a situation. Louisville just wants to stay in the news, stay in the headlines, whether it's basketball, football. Like you said, things aren't going too good there. All right, but back down to your part of town with your boys from the we mentioned their comeback against the Noles this past Saturday in grand fashion, because it really looked terrible for a minute there. But I wanted you to talk for a minute about Amon Richards. His career appears to be over because of disabling neck injury. They said with this particular injury, playing football would be too high of a risk going forward. What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Very tough to see happen. I hate seeing kids get injured, and really their career, they played all the way up until this point. He had a very explosive freshman season where he broke the great Michael Irvin's freshman receiving record. And then he turned around and had a bit of a sophomore slump, as many big-time receivers do. But then he was poised to have a pretty good junior season after coming back from a hamstring. He banged his knee against LSU, and we haven't seen him since. And then it turns out he has a neck injury. It was really perplexing. I'm thinking to myself, well, where did this come from? Because we expected him to be back a few weeks ago, and it's just kind of been business as usual. He's kind of like that extra guy. You see Jeff Thomas, you see Shaq Wiggins, you see Brian Hightower. You see a lot of freshmen, Brevin Jordan, the freshman tight end as well, making plays. But you haven't seen Amon Richards come back, and it had to be something serious, and now we know it's really serious because when you have a neck injury like this, and this is the second player on this team in consecutive years that have had disabling neck injuries that they cannot play football anymore. Malik Young, one of the better corners in the country, he was poised to be at least a draftable player coming into this year. He had to have surgery, and he's on the coaching staff now. But when I look at these two injuries, I don't think it's something with the medical staff or anything. I think it's just a freak accident type thing. But it does give you a little pause if you're a player coming in. Well, we've had two big injuries back-to-back to high-profile players. If I'm a young prospect, I'm asking questions.
Right. So Richards will end his career. Like you said, he was a 4-star recruit, was a freshman All-American in 2016 with 49 catches and 934 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns for his whole career at Miami. He will end with 74 catches for 1,382 yards and 6 touchdowns. So, yeah, this is something that you don't want to see. You know, you hate to see something like this. But he has to take the safe route, you know, going forward. Todd McShay had him as the number 9 wide receiver for 2019 in the preseason rankings. And Mel Kiper Jr. had him as the number 4 wideout among underclassmen. So, you know, this is a guy who, he had a nice trajectory, you know, going up. You know, some positive things happening. And then you have to deal with something like this, man. So, you know, shout out to him. I hope there's a plan B, you know. I pray that there is.
From everything Mark Richt talked about in his presser, he said that they're going to make sure they find Amon not only a stable career option, but it's been extended to him a chance to be on the coaching staff. He'll get his full scholarship still, where he can still play. He can still go into the classroom and finish his degree. So that's admirable by a stand-up coach like Mark Richt. He's always been that kind of guy that I respect the heck out of him. I don't like his play calling, but that's a whole different story for another day. Some of these college coaches, they do have a heart.
Good guy, bad play calling. I feel you. All right, quick question for you, and we're going to stay in Florida with this one, man. Simple question. Are the Gators for real?
Oh, man, this one's a tough one because I actually called this game. I said LSU would win this game, and they found a way finally. The issues that they had on offense with Joe Burrow as quarterback, he was supposed to be what changed the program around. They haven't had a quarterback really make any big-time plays probably since Zach Mettenberger when he had Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry and Jeremy Hill. By the way, all three of those guys are in the NFL. So who was really more important? But nonetheless, Joe Burrow finally threw that pick six to really just break his team's back. The defense couldn't come back from it. Florida looks good on defense. I'm still not sold on their offense. But Dan Mullen, he's come up with 2 big wins, one against his former team and another against a big-time cross-division rival. The only thing that stands between him and this Florida team and an SEC title bid is Georgia, which I'm just being honest, Georgia's been pretty good, but they haven't really played anyone. So that'll be the world's largest the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. We know we don't like to call it that anymore, but quite honestly, that's what I grew up with it being called, and I'm not changing it. So when that game happens, we'll see how real this team is. I hold all reservations until then. If Georgia blows them out, then I will. They're halfway real. If they find a quarterback, which I think they have one, he's just kind of a young redshirt freshman at this point. Dan Mullen likes to run that veer option spread attack. What you saw with Tebow, what you saw with J.T. Barrett at Ohio State, what you saw with Nick Fitzgerald, Dak Prescott at Mississippi State, all of what you saw in these past years, that's what he wants to do. He doesn't have that just yet, but he can lean on a really good defense right now, and I think the defense is only going to get better. So they're half back. I'll say they're half back. Quite honestly, I have a nice little idea what I want to happen. My crystal ball is saying Florida may just upset Georgia, but Georgia gets them back in the end. Florida goes and sees Alabama and gets humbled in an SEC title matchup, and Georgia somehow gets into a national championship bid with a playoff bid. So we'll see, but just maybe. You know how I feel about you, Gator fan. Just saying.
Chomp. All right. Speaking of real and what's not, Auburn has been struggling on offense a little bit. You want to outline? You want to highlight their struggles? Let us know what's going on.
This offense was supposed to be one of the most explosive offenses in the country. And what ends up happening with this offense is you have Jarrett Stidham, who comes over from Baylor last year. He was supposed to be what solidified this team. Anytime you have a quarterback transfer or from whether it's in high school, college, the NFL, if a guy comes over, he needs at least 2 years to be comfortable in the offense, 3 years to be well-versed in the offense and master it. Well, this offense hasn't been exactly mastered by Jarrett Stidham. The defense was supposed to be really good. I thought they could have probably the best collective group on all three levels. Not really seeing it, not really feeling it. This Auburn team lost to LSU. Didn't really like what I saw from that effort. This Auburn team also hasn't really been great in the run game, and that's what their bread and butter is, the run game. So for me, what I see from this team is a very mediocre, overrated team. This is the second time in a couple weeks that they've been exposed, and they've been exposed on all three levels of their defense. I'm out on Auburn. I rarely say that on a Gus Malzahn-led team, but I'm out on Auburn. I think what really makes this offense go, you need a Nick Marshall or Cam Newton type quarterback, but a passer. It just doesn't seem like a more of a pure pocket passer is not what this offense needs. You need a dual threat, a true dual threat who can make plays with his legs as well as his arm and be a true threat in the run game. Otherwise, you're just adding a passing element. But this offense isn't as dangerous as it has been. I think Nick Marshall ran this offense the best back when they went to they faced off against Florida State in the national championship game. That's when, next to Cam Newton, I think those were two of their best years, and it doesn't seem like they've really been able to recreate that either. Jeremy Johnson was supposed to do that years ago. He never was able to do it. Jarrett Stidham was supposed to be a little bit more of a dual threat, but a passer more than a runner. He hasn't been able to do that. Gus Malzahn isn't fighting for his job yet, but this offense better ramp it up, especially in the run game.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the top 25 because some shakeups this week. There were upsets aplenty within the top 25, so there should be some new things happening in the top 10. Tell us about them.
Man, I'm sorry, but when you beat your rivals coming back from 20, you shouldn't fall in the rankings, but I'll leave that alone. My bias is showing. But nonetheless, I'll leave that for the voters to say. Quite honestly, just a nugget before I really get into this, if you're not in the top 4 or you're not Alabama, none of this really matters, quite honestly, because you're not going to be able to climb too much higher. But when I look at this top 25, Alabama stays at 1. They should stay at 1. Georgia stays at 2. They should stay at 2. Ohio State, Clemson, they've kind of kept their way in there in this whole thing. Notre Dame keeps moving up, and they have the best opportunity to be the next team up. Usually we always say next man up when there's injuries. Well, they're the next team up when somebody falls victim to a loss. They are a really dangerous team. Ian Book has really helped this team out in the passing game and brought a bit of a running element to this team too. And the defense is really nasty. Penn State they helped themselves a bit. They were number 11. They're back into the top 10. Texas upsetting Oklahoma, and not just upsetting Oklahoma, blowing Oklahoma out. Because quite honestly, yeah, the score says 48-45, but if you were watching that game, it was 42-24 going late into that game, and Kyler Murray pulled off some Heisman-type magic to have his team come storming back, but Sam Ehlinger just made plays at the end. And by the way, guys, he was a sophomore. He still has 2 more years left. He could potentially be the best quarterback in the conference next year. Good luck stopping a Texas team that may have just turned the corner after we thought this team might be dead in the water after losing to Maryland of all teams. Other shakeup in this, I look at how this Michigan team has slowly gone up. This UCF team is going up a little bit. Miami still kind of there at 16-17. Kentucky took their first loss. They fell a little bit. It was a close game, so they're not going to fall much. You also have teams like Mississippi State jumping up in there. Florida jumped from 22 to 14 after beating LSU. And there, by the way, I don't understand this about these polls. You beat the team that's still ahead of you. If you beat a team, you should be ahead of them, not 1 spot behind them, not 2 spots behind them. But if LSU's top 5, if they're number 5, they should not be 13, and the team that beat them at 22 should be 14. It shouldn't happen. They should be flip-flopped no matter what. That's just my thinking.
Yeah, I mean, especially if they're that close. I can see if you had to hop a lot and they were, much farther ahead, then the loss probably couldn't take you above them. But if they're going to put you 1 spot behind them and you beat them, like you said, come on, man, flip-flop that. All right, but you spoke of the Texas upset over Oklahoma. There was some fallout after that game as well because Oklahoma fired defensive coordinator Mike Stoops. Interesting because I was watching a little bit of that game, and, of course, they had his dad, Bob Stoops, in the booth to do a little commentary for a few minutes during the game. And then after the game, his son basically loses his job. What's going on?
Well, Oklahoma has not been great defensively. They've given up a ton of yards just against Texas alone. Texas was 2 for 2 on 4th down, 6 of 14 on 3rd down, giving up 27 first downs. You gave up 325 yards and through the air, 177 yards on the ground. Total of 500 yards total. I mean, and you didn't create turnovers. For me, when I look at Texas only punted, they only had to punt a total of 6 times in that game. That is never good. This Texas team is not known for having an explosive offense. They're not even known for having a really great offensive line. This offensive line was pushing these guys back. And quite honestly, this Oklahoma defense they gave up a lot. They lost a lot going into coming after last year, so I can understand that. But you should never give up 500 yards to anybody if you are a top tier team. One thing I did notice throughout the year, and I actually said this early on, I said Oklahoma better buckle up because they're in for a really good game. And Kyler Murray, if you really notice, I actually kind of saw this when Oklahoma played Army. Army put up big numbers against them. Iowa State put up big numbers against them. So if those teams can do it, a big name program like Texas can do it too. By the way, Dev, we got to get out to an Oklahoma-Texas game. I'm just saying. I need some of this Friday. I need to go to this carnival, man. I got to go to this thing looks like it's legit. We got to make it happen.
Will do, definitely. One last thing before I pick them, man. Definitely got to start ramping up this Heisman talk. What's it looking like after 7 weeks of the season? What's it looking like?
At the bottom, I'll give you a top 5. We'll just go with that. Jonathan Taylor, running back, Wisconsin, still in the mix. I don't think he'll win it, but anything can happen. The sophomore rushed for 221 yards and 3 touchdowns on 24 carries against Nebraska the last time we saw him. It was his second 200-yard performance. When I see this, he's a really good running back, but he fumbles a lot, and that's always never good. It hurts your production. You can get more touches, but he's at the bottom. He's the best running back in the country. It's not even close. He gets consideration. When you get multiple 200-yard games, you get any kind of consideration from me. That Michigan game is going to be crucial for him. If he puts up big numbers, look out. Although this might be just a very quarterback-heavy year, and anytime it's a quarterback-heavy year, you always have to worry about that happening. Also, Wisconsin's in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten isn't known for having big-name opponents out of conference. That always hurts as well. At number 4, I have Will Grier. Still not ready to put him up there with Tua as well as Kyler Murray, but he's been putting up big numbers. He put up 332 yards and 4 touchdowns against Kansas. For me, he's another Big 12 quarterback that puts up big numbers in a pass-happy offense. The team's 5-0, but I need to see more. I need to see him do it against a real team. So once he does it against a real team, then we can talk a little bit more. At number 3, and this was hard to do, because you really have 3 really good quarterbacks in the top 3 of this, but Kyler Murray putting up big numbers, not only through the air but on the ground as well. The kid has 26 total touchdowns. By the way, he brought his team back from 45-24 at the end of that Texas-Oklahoma game and put his team in contention to win it. 5 touchdowns in that game, third time in his last 5 games. So for me, he's third on my list, but that's only because you have a guy like Dwayne Haskins who's just lighting these teams up in the Big Ten. 455 yards, 6 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions against the Hoosiers. 71% completion percentage. That's the number that really impresses me when I see him. He's a big, tough kid. I remember when he came out of high school, he was actually committed to Maryland, and he switched his commitment at the last minute when Ohio State decided to offer. I'm glad he had a chance to sit, but this offense is rolling with him throwing the football. He's beat a Big Ten opponent in Penn State. That was a very good performance by him. He can only get better throughout the season. He has a Michigan game looming, and he has a Wisconsin game looming as well in the Big Ten if they make it to the Big Ten championship. So he has 2 big-name opponents left. I actually hope they get that far. That way we can see what he's like against another good defense. And at number 1, this one's not even close. It's a no-brainer. At number 1, I have Alabama quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. He's been a pleasant surprise. I actually thought he may not do what he's doing after that national championship game. It was a mixed bag, quite honestly. Folks, he made a mistake on the throw he made at the end of the game against Georgia. He just had a guy in the right place, and the defender wasn't there to make a play on the ball. But he has been nothing short of magnificent. He doesn't play full games at this point. He has not played one full game. Alabama's dropping 50, 60 points on people, and he was 10 of 11 for 4 touchdowns to start the game. Let's put that in perspective. Incompletion. 4 of them were touchdowns. They're using gadget plays with him at this point. We're putting Jalen Hurts at wide receiver, running him on jet sweeps, and then the following play, we're going to put Tua at wide receiver and put Jalen at quarterback and make plays doing that. So now they're just tinkering around, playing with things against teams like Arkansas and Ole Miss. So when I see what Tua's been doing, and it's not just the yards, 75% completion on all of his passes throughout the season, and he has only thrown 1 interception. 1 interception all season.
Yeah.
He's played some pretty big names also. So, I mean, you played a pretty good South Carolina. I'm sorry, you played a good Ole Miss team. You still have LSU still. You have Auburn still. You have Mississippi State still. The defense isn't great at Alabama like we were used to seeing. The front seven's pretty good, but the secondary gives up a lot of points. But that's also after the game's over. It's 48-0. No one can. At that point, you have freshmen and sophomores in the game at this point. So when he's in the game, it's 28-0 in the first quarter. And when I see something like that, that says a whole lot. He's a very accurate thrower of the football. He makes difficult NFL throws. When I see him, I really see a lot of Russell Wilson in him. A lot of Russell Wilson. But think Russell Wilson maybe at like 6'2". And he makes a lot of those plays. He's not reckless with the football. And when he's scrambling, he's not scrambling to run. He's scrambling to make plays, extend the plays, and get the ball down the field. And what I've always liked about him, he's a location thrower. He's looking for a spot to throw the ball. He can go through his reads, but he's looking for a spot to throw the ball, and he's very, very accurate.
Yeah, he's been making it look pretty easy lately. It is really impressive. All right, so let's get into our last segment, our Pick'em segment. And if you are in our War Room Sports College Football Pick'em group on ESPN, this is the time for you to sit back, maybe take some notes. Make sure you listen, because this is your chance to make some headway against the quote-unquote experts. And I say that because, you guys are really out to beat Fred, but the top 2 players in the standings right now are, yours truly, Fred and I. So, I'm going to put myself in that mix, man. You guys got to do better, because Fred drops this knowledge on you every week. All you got to do is take notes. I mean, he's not going to do your homework for you. He's not going to give you the answers, but he even throws you an answer or 2 every week as well. So take notes, listen, and make educated decisions on what you hear. Now, you want to say something, Fred, before we get started?
I had a little bit of a bad week last week. I went 50%, and I pride myself. I look at my picks like a very good game plan. We got to stop the run. Nothing deep. So I've been taking a few risks, and lately I'm not no more risks. We're in championship mode now. We got to finish strong.
All right. Well, let's start it out with Michigan State at 3-2, going to see number 8 Penn State at 4-1, who should be 5-0, but that's another story.
This Michigan State team they bother me. I don't understand this team. One week they're losing to Arizona State, the next week they're knocking off a team, and now they're losing again. This defensively, I just don't trust this team anymore. I'm out on this team. On the other side of things, Trace McSorley has a lot of Baker Mayfield in him. I don't think he's an NFL number 1 overall pick kind of guy, but if he ever gets to that point where he's a draftable player, which I think he'll have a role in the NFL, I think maybe how we saw last night with the Saints, Taysom Hill, very good athletes. They really know how to make plays. They'll find a spot for him. But while he's at Penn State, he's going to make a lot of plays in this game. If you don't stop Trace McSorley, you're in trouble. You have to limit him as a biggest thing is they use him in so many ways in the run game with this RPO stuff. QB draws are huge for him. He'll just take off at any point, and it's just not even a design play. He just calls his own number. If you don't stop him, Michigan State, you're in trouble.
All right. Let's go to number 2, Georgia Bulldogs, sitting at 6-0, versus the number 13 LSU Tigers, who is coming off that loss to Florida.
This game is in Death Valley, and what time? This game is all when it's in Death Valley. And it doesn't really necessarily have the same mystique anymore. But when I look at this game, I look at 2 really good defenses. One team has a really good offense in Georgia, but they haven't been tested yet. This LSU team, they just don't move the ball a ton. Joe Burrow isn't a good enough quarterback, but a home field advantage for LSU may help them. This is always one of the better cross-division rivalries in the SEC. I really, really like Georgia in this one. They're a very complete team. I want to see a little bit more from their secondary. DeAndre Swift at running back is going to be very crucial for them. Also, Michael Hardman at wide receiver you're going to see a lot of him versus Greedy Williams. I want to see what he can do. He's not the biggest receiver in the world, but he's one of those guys that just finds a way. You use him in the screen game. You use him in the short to intermediate passing game. I want to see Greedy Williams follow him all over the field and see what happens with this matchup. That's my matchup to watch.
All right. Let's go to number 7, Washington versus number 17, Oregon.
This is one of the biggest rivalry games in college football for the West Coast. I will be watching this game. I've seen so many big-time plays, so many big-time players come from this rivalry. I think back to the Marcus Mariota days. I think back to the days of Jake Locker. A lot of Tennessee Titan fans remember that name. But this rivalry has always been one of the biggest, and I expect big things from both quarterbacks. You have an NFL top pick type quarterback in Justin Herbert from Oregon. Let's see if he can handle a decent defense in Washington, whereas you have Jake Browning, who's more of the Kellen Moore type. We remember our days at Boise State with Chris Peterson. He's a bigger version, but he doesn't have the biggest arm in the world, but he's such a cerebral quarterback. I want to see what he does, how he picks this Oregon defense apart. Let's see how he can do that. And Myles Gaskin just keeps rewriting records in college football. He came back for one more year, and we know how you never come back as a running back, but he wants to win. He wants a chance, another crack at a national championship. I don't think he'll get to one, but he's exciting to watch.
All right, I got one that I'm pretty sure you won't be watching, but who knows. Got Ohio versus Northern Illinois.
Northern Illinois gave Florida State some problems a couple weeks ago. They can score with the best of them. I will probably not have time to watch these guys, but quite honestly, I love MAC football because MAC football they're like the Big 12, but on a lower level. They score points in bunches, and you'll find some good players along the way you'll find some players that you may like this for NFL purposes. Well, let's just say that much.
All right. We got number 10, UCF versus the Memphis Tigers.
The Memphis Tigers gave them problems all of last year. Antonio Miller is no longer there, so you don't have to worry about him anymore. But Mackenzie Milton, by the way, with that name, I want to say this. College football has 3 Hawaiian quarterbacks, and all of them are really good. Whether it's Tua Tagovailoa, Mackenzie Milton at UCF, or Jordan Ta'amu at Ole Miss, they're all really, really good quarterbacks, and they can all sling it. I want to see UCF put points on everybody. Quite honestly, if it was up to me, we could skip all of this and put them in a playoff game against Alabama so we could shut them up. I really want to see Alabama kick them in the face. Just saying. Go Knights. Go Knights.
All right, so let's go to number 6, West Virginia, coming in at 5-0 versus Iowa State.
Pesky Iowa State. If you don't watch out, they'll upset you. If you don't watch out, they will upset you. But Will Grier's here. Never fear. This West Virginia offense with David Sills leading that receiving core, Will Grier making tons of plays in the passing game. They're going to put up a ton of points, but this pesky Iowa State team is going to hang around. Be careful with this pick. I have to follow my own advice in this one. Be careful.
All right. So let's go to your boys sitting at 5-1. The boys that got the little scare from Florida State, but we got the homies from facing the ACC rival Virginia.
This game, this makes no sense to me. When I went over these pick'ems, you put Miami against Virginia on this thing, but you didn't put Miami versus Florida State on this thing last week. I don't understand you, ESPN. We need to have a talk. You can find. You guys can reach me on Twitter. You know how to get to me. But this Miami team is coming off of the highest of highs after a big-time comeback over rival Florida State. They're on the road. This game was a tough one for them last year. They had to come up with tons of turnovers to even keep this game close. Bronco Mendenhall is not a bad coach. If you remember his days at BYU with a certain Taysom Hill, who is now in the NFL, he puts together really good offenses. He had some good players drafted on the defensive side of the ball last year, and so he's going to keep that going. This game is going to be a bit of a struggle. I think Miami's going to come out a little bit flat, as any team does after an emotional win on the road. Expect Miami to come out a little bit flat, but they'll get it together. You know who I'm picking in this one. Come on, guys. You get a freebie. Come on.
All right, let's go to, one of my favorite types of games from the week. Two ranked teams getting it in, and these teams aren't far apart in the top 25. Number 15, Wisconsin, facing Big Ten opponent. Number 12, Michigan. Wisconsin at 4-1, Michigan at 5-1. Big Ten matchup.
This Wisconsin team, this is one of the matchups I've always liked watching over the years, whether it was the days of Michigan being a more 3 yards in a cloud of dust type of team, or now with them running a lot more of the spread concepts. I like Shea Patterson as a quarterback. I think he has a lot of potential going to the NFL. I just think with this Wisconsin defense, you're going to have a lot more of a struggle. This offensive line isn't great, but he has to make plays. Michael Higdon, who's emerging as a pretty good running back, he's going to have to be the catalyst for this team. Those two guys are going to really have to be complementary pieces. The defense is the defense. Michigan's always going to be really good on defense as long as Jim Harbaugh is there. They're going to have to go up against a beast of an offensive line with a beast of a running back in Jonathan Taylor. Word to the wise with Michigan. Swipe at the ball. He's fumble prone. Swipe at the ball. Hit that hand a little bit. Bang on that hand a little bit under the pile. I'm not telling you injure the man, but bang on that hand a little bit. Punch the ball out. You never know. You might get a turnover. That's the one thing that could hold Wisconsin back in this one. They're a run-heavy team. A lot of the old school stuff we used to see, 2 tight ends, fullback, a running back, 1 receiver. That's what you're going to see a lot of. Alex Hornibrook is great in the West Coast passing system. You're going to see a lot of the short to intermediate passing game, run the ball heavy, play action over the top. Michigan will have to be disciplined. They may have to commit an extra man to the box. That may be a problem for them. I want to see the matchup here of Wisconsin's offensive line versus Michigan's defensive line. Whoever wins that matchup probably wins the game.
All right, let's go Middle Tennessee versus Florida International.
Had a chance to see FIU against Miami a couple weeks ago. Not a bad team offensively. A lot of holes in the secondary. Middle Tennessee scores points in bunches, like those MAC teams up north. These Sun Belt teams, they score points. They find a way to score points. This is actually going to be a matchup I'm going to actually watch. Anytime I see Butch Davis on TV, whether it was his days with the Browns, North Carolina, when he was actually doing things and winning, he hasn't won anything really since 2000. Come on home, Butch. Come on home. Yeah, you came home. You went to the wrong school. Come on home. We'll welcome you with open arms. But this is going to be a very interesting game, very fun game to watch. If you're just one of those college football junkies, this is the type of game you watch in the intermediaries where you're going to have to, watch in between a Michigan, Wisconsin, and maybe an LSU, Georgia game. This is something you get in later in the day.
All right, and last but not least, number 19, Colorado, who's undefeated, 5-0, visiting the USC Trojans.
USC had an off week. They needed it. When I look at this team, JT Daniels is a really young quarterback. He's going to be a really good one down the road, but right now he's going to struggle. Amon-Ra St. Brown, if that name again sounds very familiar, brother of Equanimeous St. Brown, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers from Notre Dame. Those two make a great connection. They're going to make a lot of big plays over time. But this game against Colorado is going to be tough for them. It's going to be a scoring fest. Colorado scores points in bunches. I really like what Coach Mike McIntyre has going on out there. This is the second out of 3 years where they've really had big numbers on the offensive side. Last year was a fluke. When you have injuries at the quarterback position, you lose a ton of guys. You lose your whole secondary to the NFL. 2 of them went to the Cowboys. How unfortunate. But when you lose a ton of that, you will have a struggle. Teams are going to throw on you. You're going to be in shootouts. If your quarterback gets hurt, you can forget it in college football. So this is going to be a very interesting one. I want to see how this young USC team responds to some injuries, and also some time off. Because anytime you have a bye week, you have to worry about the rust setting in because you're only practicing against your guys. And in today's climate where we don't practice much. See if they come out flat. If they don't come out flat and JT Daniels has a little bit of time to rejuvenate, get better in the classroom as well as on the practice field, we can see some big-time numbers. I root for this kid. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the country in a couple years. We're seeing a young kid mature as we speak.
All right, and there you have it. That's our Pick'em segment for the week. Like I always tell you guys, make sure you take those gems and you do with them as you please. But we don't want to hear any excuses when you can't catch up in the Pick'em contest at the end of the season because, man, I mean, what else does he need to do? Just spoon feed you answers? We're not about that life. All right. So this has been another episode of Quick Slants as we enter college football week 7. The season is flying by, good people. But we're here for it, and Fred will be here for it on Saturdays as well. Let them know where you're going to be if they want to talk some smack on Saturday.
You can catch me on Twitter, Fred Purdue CFB. I will be diving deep into LSU, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan. Of course, I'm going to be watching the night game, Miami, Virginia. Got to support my guys. So you'll see me on Twitter. Catch me there.
All right. And I'll definitely be next to Fred on the proverbial couch as well after I finish all of my sports running around for the 7-year-old on Saturday. So, yeah, I should be in, Fred, settled in for good at about 2 p.m. on Saturday. So, I'm not going to miss a whole lot. So we'll see you guys then, and we'll definitely talk to you guys next week. For my partner, Fred, this is Devin McMillan. Like we always tell you guys, don't accept mediocrity. Be steadfast in the war against ignorance. We'll see you chumps on Saturday, and we'll see you chumps on top. Quick Slants. Peace.